the Dharma.
And probably.
What was that?
I'm just doing the chant.
Yeah, I'm not hearing it from people.
The Dharma
Profound, exquisite, is rarely met with even in hundreds of thousands and millions of kalpas. We now can see it, hear it, accept and hold it. May we realize the true mind of the Tathagata, which, as you've heard before, is known other than our own mind. There is one mind. So yesterday in Teisho, we heard a very perceptive poem called Zazen by Virginia Hamilton Adair. It was composed quite a long time ago, but it is still pertinent today. And it gives an indication of what can be, how we can free ourselves. Well, not so much how we can free ourselves, that we can free ourselves through our Zazen. Then that's going to be followed up by a Rumi poem giving instructions on how to do it. So now Jared will read those two poems.
Okay, Zazen. When I first floundered in, no one knew me. Not even myself, staggering under a Saratoga trunk, crammed with humiliations, bottled like urine samples, nail kegs of anger, carbons of abusive letters, chemistry quizzes with F's, even the horse I never had, and 2 casseroles left over from the dime-a-dip supper. No one remarked that I had brought too much. I was wearing 3 fur hats donated by opulent cousins, my feet encased in cement ever since the failure of the patio project, and my mouth full of barbs as an old trout. No one praised my appearance. The trunk fell off my back, disgorging its unusual contents at my stone feet, which also came off. The fur hats tumbled like a moth-eaten avalanche, burying a small monk. No one noticed. My sweat began to dry. I folded myself into one piece. No one. Okay, and this is The Guest House by Rumi. This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond.
So, we all come into Zazen with our own version of the Saratoga trunk and the feet encased in concrete. And as we do our Zazen, gradually, things get let go. The trunk falls off our back. The contents get dissolved. The concrete on our feet disappears. We begin to feel more free. Of course, this does not happen easily. It requires some courage, sometimes a lot of courage. It requires a willingness to, as Rumi said, meet every guest at the door and treat them honorably. We all have our load of conditioning that determines how we interact with the world. And often it's not very positive, but we're not aware of that. We feel like we're needing to defend ourselves, or we're feeling like people are abusing us. Now, sometimes they really are, and that's something that needs to be dealt with. But a lot of times we misperceive people's intentions and their motivations and their interactions. But we don't realize it. What we do see is the pain and suffering that is a result of that in our own lives. And those are the guests Rumi speaks of. Welcome them with open arms. Don't try to turn your back on them. Don't try to sweep them under the carpet. Don't try to turn them away. Welcome them. Because each guest, so to speak, that you welcome is an opportunity to let go of some form of attachment that's been causing you pain. And in my more than 50 years of Zazen, I can tell you, I haven't run out of them. It takes time. Because initially, things seem fine. It's exciting to be doing Zazen. We begin to get another attachment, and that is to being a Zen person. And as our Zazen, which literally means seated meditation, begins to progress, we begin to become more aware of these things. And that's where the work really begins. What Rumi was expressing in very different words was working with the felt sense. Was, again, not turning your back on these experiences. These mind states that appear and disappear, these experiences that are sometimes happy and so many times not so happy come. Use the felt sense. Tune in. This is meeting them at the door and honoring them. You're not analyzing these feelings or these experiences. You're going into your body and experiencing what the body doesn't want to feel. And that's why we go up into our heads and get angry or feel put upon or any of the other reactions we have, causing us pain and just as often causing other people pain around us. But when we go into the felt sense, it's very different. Initially, it doesn't seem like there's much to sense sometimes. Sometimes we have to really work on it because we're so practiced in not feeling, because feeling hurts. Feeling makes one anxious. It doesn't make one anxious. It means tuning into the anxiety that is already there. And we try to escape all of these things, but we can't. Not if we're to live a very complete and fulfilling life. Not if we're going to be able to change our ways through insight, through recognition. Oh my God, I didn't realize I was acting that way. Oh goodness, I didn't realize that I had assumed something about this person that wasn't true. Oh my goodness. when we go into those senses in our body, they're just energies. And when we do so, again and again and again, because initially they don't respond, but practice, keep going, and they will respond. Suddenly you'll have the joy of having one of those difficult feelings in your body just slide away, bringing relief. Not just go away, because you haven't finished it yet. But when it has a sense of just releasing, that means you've gotten that one. That means you're a tiny bit freer. And often there's another sense underneath that. Sometimes there's a whole set of layers. What we thought was misery and maybe depression turns out to have an underlying experience of fear. And that often there's an underlying sense of grief before it can finally release. But it is the most incredible way to do the training. It works. And then, of course, in Rinzai Zen, we have this extended out-breath called Sosokkan in Japanese, where you extend your breath, your out-breath only. And you take it as far as you can, and then just a little bit farther. In other words, you breathe out naturally, and then you take it further out, just short of gasping. And what this does, as we do it again and again, is it begins to cut the chatter. We have to focus to the degree that we can't be multitasking, which doesn't really work anyway. We can't be thinking about stuff and extending the out-breath past a certain point. We can't keep both of those things going. And the priority is to extend the out-breath because it trains us in letting go and in focusing. And focusing is incredibly important in life. When we can focus, it means we can become present. And when we can become present, it's a very different experience from living in our head, in our ideas. Unfortunately, these days, because of all the technical tools, toys really, we have these mini computers in our hands called phones that you can look up all kinds of things on the internet. You can communicate with voice, or you can even text. You can quickly send a message to somebody, and they can quickly respond if they have their phone on, and they're in a position to do so. And they're quite amazing little gizmos, and we get addicted to them. It's so much fun to surf the internet, finding out all kinds of interesting things, some of it true, some of it not true, some of it exciting, some of it titillating, and it's become a major way of communicating to the point where the only attention we pay is to these little devices. We don't pay attention to our surroundings, and in fact, there's some very funny videos, people walking off docks because they were so engrossed in talking on their phone, or doing various other things that are ridiculous because they weren't paying attention to what they were doing in terms of anything but the phone. And so we live in a tiny, tiny world of our own imagination. The world is of our own making regardless, but 50 years ago, it was very different. We didn't have TV. We didn't have, well, maybe 50 years ago we did have. Yes, we did have 50 years ago. But when I was a little kid, we did not have TV. We had telephones. Not everybody had a telephone. We didn't have dial phones. And we certainly didn't have cordless phones that you could take everywhere with you. So you could always be in touch, which has its downside sometimes when your boss decides to call you at 8 o'clock at night or even at midnight because he's in some other country. One of my sisters travels a great deal. She does a lot of consulting internationally, and I didn't have a cell phone for quite a while, so it didn't come up to me. But our other sister would get calls from her at 2 a.m. and so on, and just learn to keep her phone off, because that was daylight where the traveling sister was staying, but it certainly wasn't back in the old United States. TV has been studied. It's well known that you cannot be in a room with a TV on and not be constantly drawn to the TV. The flickering pictures draws your attention. These days, programs are so short that you end up having several different installments, or maybe 8 minutes long, of the actual program, and then 15 minutes of advertisements, and then you have to wait for the next installment. This is not helping our brains. This is not helping our lives. People walk down the street with friends, not talking, but texting each other on their phones. People don't learn how to interact humanly because they don't have the opportunity to. On a screen, whatever you write can be anonymous. And that has turned out to be a very difficult situation. It's led to bullying. It's led to all kinds of shaming. It's led to a lot of pain and suffering because people can write whatever they want to write. You can have a pseudonym. You don't even have to be identified by your own name. You don't have to be pictured. And abuses can happen on the internet beyond that kind of thing. A person can have some kids, 10-year-old daughters, for example, who get a Facebook friend request from somebody named Judy or Pamela, and they accept it, and then Judy or Pamela gets friendly and then says, "Why don't you send me a picture? I'd love to see what you look like." And they post some kind of picture of themselves. At least that's what it looks like. Only it turns out that this Judy or Pamela is some guy in Africa who's trying to steal your identity, who's trying to use AI to morph your face onto somebody's naked body. There's all kinds of negative things that come along with that positive ability to communicate, to research. And that doesn't help, as I said. We get more and more lost in our own fake world, unable to discern what the real truth is. But as we do Zazen and face the pain and the suffering through our body, not through our head, things begin to change. First, they can seem like they're getting worse because we had hidden a lot of things away from ourselves. And in fact, you've heard so many times when I quote a fellow Sangha member when we were in Rochester who had had a kensho during a sesshin and had a very difficult time even walking into the zendo. She wrote that she had to virtually nail herself to the mat. She wanted to flee. And that can be how it can feel. That is our inner fake self trying to maintain control, not to be revealed. And so it puts up a fight. But this woman also wrote, this practice is truly bodhisattvic. First, it shows us where we're caught. That's the difficult, painful part. But that part is what we have to walk through, work with, face honestly, welcome at the door and honor, or we can't let it go. So, she says, this practice is truly bodhisattvic. First, it shows us where we're caught, and then it sets us free. So, once you start having these small but painful realizations, things come up. And you go ahead and you work with them through the felt sense. You work with them through using the extended out breath with curiosity. That's an important component because there is something. There is something. There is something. Rumi called it this longing. There is something beyond. And it is freeing, and it is real, and it is the most real that there is. And through this zazen, letting go of the Saratoga trunk, letting the barbs fall out your mouth, letting the moth-eaten hats fall off your head, letting the concrete shoes drop off. And you finally begin to feel like you're getting close to naked, and that can be frightening. Because we keep all these things like the Saratoga trunk full of stuff. We keep all these things like the barbs in our mouth. We keep all these things like the failure of the patio project. Both as an entertainment, oddly enough, and also because we don't know how to let them go. They are sources of pain and suffering. They are the things that cause us to create pain and suffering, not only for ourselves, but also for other people around us. But with zazen, we can become free. And Rumi showed us how. This being human is a guest house. Every day, a new arrival. Welcome it. Welcome it. In this way, over time, you'll go through difficult, painful times, but then that begins to thin out. It's as if you have been struggling through a swamp full of murky water with alligators, poisonous snakes, vines hanging down, ready to snag you, danger all around, difficulty. It's dark in there. But as you continue on, your feet begin to reach more solid ground. The swamp begins to not be as swampy. And eventually you find yourself out in a beautiful meadow. But then you keep going, because that is not the ultimate. There's more you can do to become more free. And it's so important, especially in this day and age when the world is in chaos. There is so much suffering. If we can find peace within ourselves, that energy communicates to others and reaches other people in pain. And gradually, things can change. So I thank you for listening. We'll stop now and recite the 4 vows.